Our story begins inside of the Chancellor's office on Coruscant with Anakin finding Mace Windu pushing Palpatine into a corner. Palpatine was begging Anakin for help, telling him to see the truth. The Jedi are taking over. Everything was happening so fast. The dark side of the Force was strong in this room, even with Windu standing over Sidious. It was poisoning the minds of the Jedi, and Windu knew what he had to do. He lifted his blade, and he would swing for the kill. But Anakin panicked. He knew if Palpatine dies, Padme dies. So he ignited his own blue blade, and he cut right through the wrist of Mace Windu. His hand fell out of the window. Palpatine smiled, decades of work turning to victory, and he blasted Windu with an extreme amount of lightning, no longer hiding his true nature. This was who he was. For 1,000 years, the Sith have worked for this. From Darth Bane all the way to Darth Sidious, the centuries of work were paying off. But as Sidious lifted his veil and revealed his true nature, his true form, and unleashed his true darkness, Anakin made a grim realization. This man is the root of all evil in the galaxy. As he blasted Windu with lightning and suffocated the Force with darkness, Anakin finally saw him for what he was, a murderous freak of nature. This was the man who's discarded Maul, Dooku, Grievous, everyone who's ever trusted him, all for his own gain. And Anakin knew the truth, and he felt Qui-Gon. Maybe it was all in his own head, but the voice of Qui-Gon spoke, telling Anakin to remember. His focus determines his reality, and Anakin closed his eyes, letting the Force guide his arms as he swung forward once more. The lightning ceased. Sidious felt the gash sear into him. He knew it was over. He tried with all his might to keep his essence alive in the Force, and the top half of Palpatine would topple out of the window. Mace Windu collapsed to the floor, body still spasming, shaking from the lightning. He suffered severe burns. His hand was missing. He could barely move. But it was over. Anakin has done it. There was a long moment where neither of them would move, but eventually, Anakin would put Windu's arm over his shoulder, and they would leave together. And from here, everything Anakin did would be focused on making sure that Padme does not die in childbirth. News of Palpatine's death would spread like a wave across the Jedi, then the Senate, the clones, and the citizens. It was not a secret that could be well hidden. There were so many questions about the Jedi, their role in this, whether they were right to do it, but a Senate committee would step in and work with the Jedi Council to prove all of Palpatine's crimes. Everything culminated in the galaxy beginning to see Palpatine for what he truly was. And then, with the stress of rebuilding a broken republic, Padme Amidala would soon go into labor. Anakin was by her side the entire time, using the Force to calm her mind, along with himself. It was an agonizing process, but in the end, twin babies would be born, Luke and Leia Skywalker, and Padme Amidala would survive. The next few hours were the most wonderful hours of Anakin and Padme's time together, but soon, Anakin would be called back to the Jedi Temple. By now, it was no secret that Anakin was the father of Padme's child. Obi-Wan was forced to tell them the truth when discussing events with Palpatine, and for so long in Anakin's life, he has wanted to leave the Jedi Order, live a calm, normal life. But now, with the war over and peace having returned, he actually wanted the twins to grow up as Jedi. Padme wanted this as well, but with the stipulation that she and Anakin still play a great role in their lives. Anakin was certain the Council would oblige this request after he killed the Sith Lord. But as he entered the Council chambers, just days after the end of the war, there was a tension in the Force. Anakin was walking over to his Council seat when Windu spoke, telling Anakin to take a stand in the center of the room. Windu had bandages covering his burns. His hand had been replaced with one similar to Anakin's, and Anakin spoke first, apologizing for keeping his relationship with Padme secret. He knows attachment is forbidden, but she has welcomed twins into this galaxy, and with the Council's blessing, he would like to request that they be trained as Jedi when they are ready. Anakin glanced at Obi-Wan, expecting to see a proud smile on his master's face, but Obi-Wan's eyes were looking elsewhere, as if his mind were fighting what he truly wanted. And then Yoda spoke, telling Anakin he has greatly violated the Jedi Code. Yoda said that the Jedi forbid attachment because it leads to the dark side of the Force, and the first Sith Master to reveal himself in 1,000 years chose to do so largely because of Anakin's attachments. Yoda continued, saying that his attachment to Senator Amidala allowed his mind to be infiltrated. It led him, all the way to cutting the hand off of a Jedi to save a Sith Lord. Anakin didn't understand. He didn't have the words. And then Windu spoke again, telling Anakin that his choice in the end was a noble one. He killed Sidious, but his violation of the code is not an example they want to set for other Jedi, and the Senate and the courts are wary of the Jedi assassinating Palpatine without a trial. They have requested that Anakin be expelled, and so the Council has voted to expel him from the Order. Anakin didn't move. How dare they? He turned to each council member one by one, looking them in the eyes, and telling them that, even after everything, even after they were blind to the Sith rising under their noses, they're choosing to ally with the Senate that supported Palpatine. They're refusing to alter their ways, even after being nearly destroyed. No one spoke. Anakin stared right at Obi-Wan as Windu told Anakin he was dismissed. And so, Anakin would leave the council chambers, deciding he doesn't need the Jedi. For so long, he dreamt of leaving the Order, so why was this so difficult? As Anakin moved through the halls, a voice eventually called to him. It was Obi-Wan, telling him to wait, and he told Anakin that he'd been sent to retrieve his lightsaber, as Anakin cannot take it with him. Anakin couldn't help but laugh as he told Obi-Wan that he thought he of all Jedi would have his back. Why didn't he stand up for him? Obi-Wan sighed heavily, allowing himself to let down the walls he'd built around his emotional mind, telling Anakin that he's the greatest friend he's ever had. He's like a brother to him. He's grown to love Anakin like family, but his loyalties and his life belong to the Jedi Order. He told Anakin he would love to visit him on Naboo, or wherever he chooses to live. He wants to remain friends, but within this temple, he must abide by the will of the Council. Anakin would ask about the will of the Force. Does he abide by that? Obi-Wan said of course he does, and Anakin told him that the Force spoke to him in Palpatine's office. It came to him as a voice, Qui-Gon's voice. It helped push him down the right path, and he asked Obi-Wan if it is the will of the Force to push him out of the Order. Obi-Wan admitted that he didn't know, and Anakin looked out of the window, unable to meet Obi-Wan's eyes, as he told Kenobi that he needs some time away from the entire Jedi Order, including him. And Obi-Wan would watch him go, knowing he was right. The Council was still stuck in their rigid ways, afraid of going against the Senate, and Obi-Wan decided it may be his path to be an avatar for his master Qui-Gon and his Padawan Anakin in the Jedi Council, in order to push them back towards the Force itself. Obi-Wan would watch Anakin leave, as so many young Jedi would gather in the halls to see him. He was almost like a myth among the younger Jedi for the war stories that were told about him. Obi-Wan knew they were all true. He was the man who could win any battle, the man who killed Dooku, Sidious, and now, an outcast. They all watched him go, and of course, the young Jedi didn't understand the politics of it at all. They didn't understand how the Council could exile the Chosen One, the hero with no fear, a nickname that Anakin had been given that Obi-Wan knew was far from the truth. 3 years later, Vice-Chancellor Padme Amidala was returning to Naboo after a long day on Coruscant. The Jedi Order was negotiating old treaties to try and remove themselves from the Republic, with Obi-Wan Kenobi leading this movement. Padme and Chancellor Bail Organa wished it were as simple as letting them go where they want, but public trust of the Jedi still was not completely restored. Allowing them to just roam free in the galaxy without Senate guardrails was not easy, but Kenobi was strong in his will to do so. Over the last 3 years, Grandmaster Yoda has stepped down. Plo Koon took his place as Grand Master. Mace Windu has stepped down from his role as Council Master, instead becoming the first Jedi Senator. Obi-Wan was now the Council Master. Windu loved the Republic, and he was working with Kenobi to try and keep the Jedi somewhat tied to the Republic, while still expanding outward. It was a good movement overall. Public opinion was trending upward, as the Jedi and the clones were leading reclamation projects on war-torn worlds, Republic or Separatist, helping to unite the galaxy and helping to repair the worlds, bring them food, water, anything else needed for rebuilding. And on Naboo, things were peaceful. Padme, Anakin, and the twin children had a cozy home near the lake, but as Padme came home today, no one was home. She went over to her parents' house and found that they were watching the twins, as Anakin went off for some training. Padme would go and put Luke and Leia to sleep, wishing that Anakin were here. But his absence was not unusual. Over these last 3 years, Anakin has found that peacetime has not exactly agreed with him. The Clone War was brutal, but it had given Anakin routine. He was really good at it. In a weird way, the fighting had cleared Anakin's mind, unlike anything else before. And today, Anakin was sprinting to the top of Naboo's tallest mountain, flipping over large rocks, blocking blaster bolts of training droids with a new lightsaber that he built quickly after being expelled, allowing the Force to take over his entire movements. His new purple blade would slice through the air as Anakin dodged a blast, and it reminded him of Umbara. He climbed up an angle that was nearly 90 degrees. It reminded him of Teth. He dove across a river. The water would spray into him, reminding him of the battle on Kamino. He heard the voices, the screams of clone troopers, the clanking of battle droids, the sounds of lightsabers crashing against each other. And finally, he reached the top, and Anakin took a deep breath. The air up here was thin, but he would sit cross-legged and he would try to meditate. Anakin closed his eyes, feeling the cool wind, becoming one with the Force. He knew he should spend more time with Luke and Leia. He knew Padme just got home. He could sense her presence, and he should be there to greet her. But he just felt off. He hadn't spoken to Obi-Wan since leaving the Jedi Order, despite Obi-Wan attempting to reach out many times. For over a decade, Anakin had lived the life of a Jedi, a life of training, and then a life of war. Adjusting to peace without the Jedi Order, it was not easy. He carried the guilt for those who could not live this life of peace. He wished his mother was here, Qui-Gon. He would do anything to speak to them. He felt lost, but he didn't know who to turn to, because in the back of his mind, he missed the fighting. No one could relate to him. But soon a voice would come to him, saying, "My boy, what is troubling you?" Anakin opened his eyes to see Palpatine. He brushed him off, telling him to leave. Ever since Anakin killed Palpatine, he's had occasional visions of the man appearing to him, almost as if the Sith Lord sent his spirit into Anakin's mind as he died. He was dead, but Anakin could still see him and hear him sometimes, like an echo in the Force. And then a new voice would emerge. Ahsoka would land a speeder behind Anakin, sitting beside him on top of this mountain. This was real. Ahsoka has made Naboo her permanent home, helping with the children, living her own life. Anakin asked her if Padme sent her here, and Ahsoka nodded, saying that she worries about him. And after a moment, Anakin would ask her if she ever misses it. Ahsoka knew what he was talking about, and she admitted that she does miss aspects of the war, bonding with the clones, spending nights in horrible climates, laughing, playing cards, and then fighting alongside them the next day. It's not something she ever wants to go back to, but she does have some fond memories. And for the first time, Anakin would admit that he's fighting within himself to move on. He's afraid, and this fear is pushing him away from his family. He's afraid that his desire for battle, for fighting, and in the past for power, will cost him greatly. And as the sun finally set, Ahsoka told Anakin that everyone he's ever been with, whether it be Qui-Gon, his mother, Padme, Rex, Obi-Wan herself, anyone that Anakin has spent real time with, has seen that he has a good heart. They know how great he is. And yet, he's been the only one who's refused to see it. Anakin smiled to her, telling Ahsoka she's always known what to say, and they would get up together, going back down to the city. And as they left, the ghost of Palpatine whispered to Anakin that he cannot hide his true nature forever, but Anakin ignored it. He would find Padme, apologizing, saying things will be better. Ahsoka would help push Anakin into speaking his mind, and Padme would help Anakin find solutions to his worries, as always. And within a month, Anakin would find himself on Toydaria, fighting alongside a squad of Naboo security men, moving through a secret Hutt mining facility that was being run by slavers, with hundreds of slaves inside of it. Padme, as Vice-Chancellor, had begun digging into Outer Rim slave trade, looking for any sort of loophole to get involved. The Outer Rim was separate from the Republic, but Padme and Clone Trooper intelligence had tracked some of the Hutt slaver ships, and they made a recent stop on Tatooine to purchase some plasma. Padme said that she suspected that Naboo citizens were captured into the slave market, and she hired a mercenary, Anakin Skywalker, to infiltrate the Hutt facility. Anakin moved forward, purple blade cutting through Gamorrean guards as he got to the control room. He felt so alive, accessing the control switch, deactivating all security measures, and he told the enslaved prisoners that now is the time to fight back. Anakin would lead the slave rebellion out of this facility, stealing transports, telling the people of refugee worlds that Padme has helped to establish. Anakin was using his abilities again. He felt free. Of course, he would always keep his identity hidden, not wanting to put his family in danger. And for around a year, Anakin spent about 90% of his days on Naboo with his family. The other 10% were spent on missions like these. It was a balance that Anakin has long been craving, and these missions would give him purpose. And eventually, he began returning to Tatooine, taking Padme and the children to the grave of his mother, telling stories all about her, spending nights with the Lars family. They were happy to have Anakin in their lives, and young Luke Skywalker would enjoy the sand far more than Anakin ever did. As Luke and Leia grew, they were smart for their age at 5 years old. They both began showing signs of the Force upon seeing their father use it, and Anakin and Padme were certain that the future was bright for them. Maybe they wouldn't be traditional Jedi, but they certainly had a future. And around 1 month later, Padme would set off to finalize a meeting with the Jedi Council, as they were finally ready to leave the Republic. Anakin set off for Nimban, where a new Hutt slaver facility was located, and Ahsoka would volunteer to watch the twins, saying she'll take them down to the beach for the day. Both parents would set off on their own missions, and Aunt Ahsoka would begin her day with the twins. But in just a few short hours, Ahsoka would feel something in the Force, a warning, and a second later, a thermal detonator would roll right over to her. Ahsoka shielded herself with the Force at the last second, jumping away, still being thrown backwards from the blast. It injured her as she crashed hard into the sand, ears ringing, eyes unable to focus. She yelled at Luke and Leia to run, and then the bounty hunter, IG-88, would step out of the tree line, pirates fanning out behind him. Ahsoka sprinted at him, swinging her blades, barely missing the limber droid hunter as he countered with razor wires whipping from his wrists, forcing her to flip back. Ahsoka was hurt, disoriented, and he would snatch her by the forearm, slamming her into the sand. She got up, dragging one saber along the ground, spraying up a sheet of hot sand, spraying across his sensors, and it bought her a breath. Ahsoka thought she'd won, but IG-88 played her. As she approached, he fired a weighted electrified net from a launcher hidden in his back. She tried to leap clear, but it was too large. She was too slow from her injuries. The electricity locked her muscles, pinning her into the sand, stunning her. Luke and Leia would be grabbed, dragged away kicking, crying, shoved into a ship as the engines were roaring to life. And IG-88 would drop a communication puck in front of her as she struggled under the net. And an hour later, Padme and Anakin would return home after hearing what happened. Ahsoka was freed by Naboo security, and now all of them stared at the communications puck that IG-88 left behind, and it was Jabba himself. He's learned through spies and other hunters that it is Anakin disrupting his operations. Jabba would make his offer simple. Anakin surrenders to him in the next 24 hours, becoming frozen in carbonite as a wall decoration, or the twins disappear forever into the unknown regions, living out a life of slavery like Anakin once did. Anakin felt hopeless. He thought he had no choice, but Ahsoka and Padme said they can fight to get the twins back. Eventually, Anakin would be convinced, and Ahsoka would say they have to be discreet. They can't bring an army, but they need an old friend. Across the galaxy, Obi-Wan Kenobi was alone in the Jedi Council chambers, meditating on the future of the Jedi as transports were being prepared for their departure from this temple. It was time they left the Senate behind, but he was afraid deep down. And then, a familiar, calming presence would be here. Obi-Wan opened his eyes, seeing Anakin standing in the doorway. Anakin opened his mouth, wanting to apologize for not reaching out in years, but Obi-Wan put up a hand, and he just hugged Anakin, telling him it is so good to see him again. He could tell he was troubled, so he asked Anakin what was going on. Anakin would go over everything, asking Obi-Wan for his help. It's not going to be easy. It would go against Jedi treaties within the Outer Rim. It's not a mission approved by the Senate. It's risky. And with a familiar smile, Obi-Wan told Anakin he wouldn't want it any other way. Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka would arrive on Tatooine at night, slipping off their transport miles from the palace, not wanting to set off any sensors. The night winds were rising, creating great cover with the flowing sand. And at the canyon ridge overlooking the palace, Obi-Wan would kneel, using comms to guide Ahsoka into a back entrance, guarded by 6 Gamorreans. She jumped high into the air, and with a force push from Anakin, she got even higher, landing above them light as a feather and sneaking in through a vent. Inside, Ahsoka would spot Cad Bane, Boba Fett, and IG-88 among many more pirate ships in the hangar, and she found the twins in a cage, atop an entrance to a Rancor pit. They would infiltrate the palace at midnight, slipping through an ignored trash chute that was far from ideal. And inside the palace, the three of them could hear music, laughter, the clink of drinks and chains. Jabba's court was in full excess. And then, the trio would split up. In just a few minutes, Anakin Skywalker slowly walked into the main room, offering his surrender to Jabba. The music would cease, all voices were cut off. Jabba laughed, saying he expected more from the great Skywalker. And across the hall, IG-88 would spot Obi-Wan Kenobi sneaking through the halls. The droid hunter took off to follow him, wanting to claim Kenobi as his own prize. And Anakin smiled, telling Jabba he's smarter than he looks, and reaching out with the Force to grab Cad Bane in a Force pull, igniting his saber right through Cad Bane's gut. No one had expected Anakin to act like this with his children at risk, and Jabba angrily smashed the button, opening the Rancor trap, dropping the twins down into it to be eaten. The Rancor roared. Jabba laughed again, looking down into the cage. But the Rancor stepped right over the twins, crashing through the huge doorway at the exit. The rumble was loud, the entire palace was shaking, and Jabba saw there was someone sitting on the Rancor, Ahsoka Tano. She'd snuck down there, using beast control to tame the Rancor, telling it through the Force that she will set it free. The Rancor crashed through the wall, grabbing Boba Fett with its great claws, eating the bounty hunter in a quick bite, as Boba tried to scramble away. Anakin was now moving through the main room, cutting down countless pirates and guards, and eventually getting to Jabba. But Jabba still wasn't worried. He had many more pirates in the hangar, awaiting something like this. But down in the hangar, IG-88 tracked Kenobi in here, sneaking up to a ship that had just been turned on. Clearly an escape ship. But IG-88 got to the front of it, and saw it was covered in thermal detonators. Now he was played. The droid hunter would accept death, as Kenobi activated them. The entire palace hangar erupted into explosions and flames. Jabba heard it, felt it, and Anakin gave a sarcastic look of surprise before cutting through Jabba, killing the crime lord. Ahsoka and the Rancor ran through the fiery hangar, picking off any and all survivors, clearing a clear escape path. Anakin and Obi-Wan would meet in the Rancor pit, each of them grabbing a twin, taking off through the chaos. It would not be long before they were back in their ship, leaving behind a destroyed castle, putting fear into the hearts of any crime lord who dares interfere with the children of the Vice Chancellor of the Republic. This event would not mark the end of Anakin's time disrupting crime in the Outer Rim, but rather a new beginning. With the Jedi expansion out of Coruscant and the capture of Senator's children, the Jedi had cause to break old rules and fight Outer Rim crime again. And although Anakin was not a Jedi, he would be a leader of this effort. And over the years, Anakin and Ahsoka would train Luke and Leia as Padme continued to rise in the Republic, eventually becoming Chancellor. Anakin would rid himself of Palpatine's spirit, and instead, he would find Qui-Gon in the Force, allowing Anakin to find his center in the light as his own type of Jedi. Mace Windu would become the head of Republic security, working with the clones to keep the Republic safe and secure. Plo Koon and Kenobi would keep the entire Jedi Order grounded, even with their new expansion. Yoda would accept death, becoming one with the Force. The Jedi Order was in an excellent state, and with Anakin and Ahsoka training Luke and Leia, the Skywalker family remained a center of hope in the galaxy. And folks, that is our story for today. A story idea I've had written down for a while, and I'd say this a lot, but one that I had some trouble coming up with a concept for. I think I actually came up with it after watching Avatar, Fire and Ash, excellent movie, 5 out of 5. And I was like, well, I want to do something just kind of, I don't know, like isolated from the Jedi, just with the family. I was going to have Luke and Leia be older, but I decided I'll save something like that for another day, and this is the path I really just enjoyed. Kind of giving a story about Anakin after the war, just not, being able to settle in. I thought it was good to just kind of center in on, he had so much expectation, so much roles within the Council, Palpatine, the war, the clones. He was the number one guy. It's over, he's exiled, and it's just like, alright, now good luck, I guess. So Really wanted to focus in on that, and I enjoyed it. I like this one a lot. Hope you did as well. Let me know what you want to see next. Subscribe. Hit that right now. Come on. 3, 2, 1. Bang. Thanks. And I'll see you in the next video.